Nobody was ready for this moment. The lights went down. The crowd held its breath. Then boom, the arena erupted. A massive pop shook the building as she walked back into WWE when no one expected it. Fans screaming, commentators stunned, social media breaking in real time. This wasn't just a return. This was a statement. Stay with me, because what happens after this comeback could change WWE forever. To understand the magnitude of this sound, you have to understand the silence that preceded it. It wasn't a quiet silence. It was the hum of anticipation, the low murmur of 20,000 people waiting for a main event that they thought they knew. The air conditioning was humming, the announcers were shuffling their papers, and the ring ropes were still vibrating from the last body that hit them. It was routine. It was predictable. And in the world of professional wrestling, predictable is safe, but it isn't magic. Then the audio cue hit. It wasn't just music. It was a trigger. It was a sound that hadn't been heard in this arena for years. For a split second, there was a collective gasp of vacuum, where all the air was sucked out of the room. It was the sound of disbelief. You could see it on the faces in the front row. Eyes widening, mouths opening, hands flying up to cover joyful screams. And then the vacuum collapsed, and the noise rushed in. It wasn't just cheering. Pop is too small a word for it. It was a roar, a primal, guttural release of emotion that shook the cameras. If you were watching at home, the audio feed likely clipped, distorting into static because the microphones simply couldn't handle the decibels. This is the moment every fan lives for. It's the moment where the scripted nature of the show dissolves, and genuine, unadulterated human shock takes over. She stepped out from the curtain. The silhouette was unmistakable. Even in a minimalist stickman style, you would know that posture. The confidence. The way she held her head high, absorbing the wave of noise like it was sunlight. She didn't run to the ring. She didn't wave frantically. She just stood there. She let the moment breathe. In that stillness, she commanded more power than anyone who had thrown a punch that entire night. The commentary team stopped speaking. What could they say? Sometimes the best job a storyteller can do is to get out of the way of the story. They let the crowd tell the tale. You saw grown men crying. You saw children jumping up and down, pointing at the entrance ramp, witnessing a legend they had only seen on old clips or video games. It was a bridging of generations. But beneath the joy, there was a heavy, palpable question hanging in the air, swirling like the fog from the pyro. Why now? She had walked away on her own terms. She had built a life outside of this chaotic circus. She didn't need the money. She didn't need the fame. So seeing her stand there, soaking in the adulation, felt dangerous. It felt like she knew something we didn't. As she began her walk down the ramp, the camera caught the details, the slight smirk. The way her eyes scanned the upper decks, the focused intensity in her stride. This wasn't a nostalgia tour. She wasn't here to wave and leave. The way she walked suggested she was marching into battle. The noise continued to swell, a relentless ocean of sound, but she moved through it with the calm of someone walking through the eye of a hurricane. She climbed the steel steps. The metal clanged, a sharp, industrial sound cutting through the cheers. She wiped her feet on the aproner ritual, a habit, a sign of respect for the canvas. When she finally entered the ring and looked out at the sea of faces, the reality set in. The landscape had changed since she left. The champions were different. The style was different. But the queen had returned to claim her kingdom. And as the music faded, leaving only the sound of thousands chanting her name, the real story began. When the broadcast fades to black, the magic trick usually ends. The hero leaves the ring, the fans file out to the parking lot, and the arena crew begins breaking down the stage. But in this story, the real drama began the moment she walked back through the curtain. Leaving the adoration of the crowd behind her and entering the cold, fluorescent reality of the backstage area, this is the gorilla position, the nerve center of the show, and on this night, the tension there was thick enough to choke on. As she stepped through the curtain, the roar of the crowd was instantly muffled, replaced by the hushed whispers of the locker room. This is the part the cameras don't show you. In the ring, she is a goddess. Back here, she is a complication. You have to imagine the scene, a long hallway lined with monitors, cables, and road cases. Leaning against those cases were the current stars of the division, the women who had been carrying the company on their backs while she was gone. They weren't cheering. To the fans, her return is a gift. To the locker room, it's a threat. Every minute of screen time she gets is a minute taken away from someone else. Every championship opportunity she receives is one snatched from a wrestler who has been driving 300 miles a night. Missing birthdays and holidays just to hold their spot, she walked down that hallway, the air shifted. It was a mixture of reverence and resentment. She walked past the new era champion, a minimalist visual. You'd see two figures passing, one, the returning legend, one, the current ruler. They didn't speak. They didn't shake hands. There was just a nod, sharp, brief, and loaded with subtext. That nod said, "I see you, and I'm ready." It was the first spark of a fire that would eventually burn down the entire storylines the writers had planned for months. Backstage is a political ecosystem. It relies on a hierarchy. When you remove the top predator, others evolve to fill the gap. But when the apex predator returns, the ecosystem falls into chaos. Producers were scrambling, whispering into headsets, rewriting scripts on the fly. The carefully laid plans for the next pay-per-view were suddenly crumpled up and thrown into the trash. Her presence disrupted the gravity of the show. She found her own corner of the locker room. She sat down, unlacing her boots. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by the dull ache of reality. Her hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer electrical output of the last 20 minutes. In the quiet of that room, surrounded by her bags, she looked less like a deity and more like a human being trying to find her footing on shifting sand. A veteran producer, someone who had been there when she was a rookie, approached her. He didn't ask how it felt, didn't congratulate her on the pop. He simply asked, "Are you sure you're ready for what comes next?" It was a valid question. The honeymoon phase lasts exactly one night. By next week, the fans would expect miracles. By next month, the critics would be dissecting her speed, her timing, and her motivation. She looked up at him and smiled, but it was a tired smile. She knew the cost. She knew that walking back through that curtain wasn't just about hearing the cheers. It was about accepting the pressure. She was disrupting the lives of everyone in that building. She could feel the eyes boring into her back, the hungry rookies who wanted to make a name by taking her out, the old rivals who felt she abandoned them, and the management who saw her as a dollar sign rather than a person. The backstage area is often described as a family, but families are messy. They're filled with jealousy, secrets, and unspoken grievances. The return was like a stone thrown into a still pond. The ripples were only just beginning to spread. As she packed her bag, slinging it over her shoulder, the hallway seemed longer than it did when she arrived. The noise of the arena was gone, leaving only the hum of the vending machines and the distant sound of the ring crew hammering away. She was back, yes. But being back meant she was now a target. And in the world of WWE, the target on your back is always bigger than the logo on your chest. While the arena emptied and the backstage politics began to simmer, a different kind of storm was brewing in the digital world. The modern wrestling landscape doesn't exist solely within the ropes. It lives, breathes, and often dies on the internet. Within minutes of her music hitting, the timeline disintegrated. It was a digital tsunami. Her name was trending #1 worldwide, not just in sports, but above global news and celebrity gossip. This section of the story is about perception. It's about how the world decides what a moment means before the people involved even have a chance to explain it. The clips were everywhere. Grainy cell phone footage from the nosebleed seats, high-definition, official snippets, reaction videos of streamers falling out of their chairs. The internet is an echo chamber of emotion, and tonight the emotion was pure, unadulterated nostalgia mixed with shock. But as the initial wave of "oh my god" tweets settled, the narrative began to splinter. This is the fascinating part of modern storytelling. The fans became detectives. They started analyzing every frame of her return. Did she look happy? Did she look thinner? Was that a limp in her step? They dissected her outfit, looking for clues or Easter eggs that hinted at who her first opponent would be. Simple color choice became a conspiracy theory about faction allegiances. Then came the pundits. The wrestling journalists, the podcasters, the voices that shaped the industry's discourse. They began the inevitable debate. Legacy versus progress. One side argued that her return was exactly what the company needed, a star power injection, a legitimate mainstream hook that would sell tickets and boost ratings. They called her the savior, the missing piece of the puzzle. The other side was more cynical. They asked the hard questions. It pointed out that the current roster was stacked with incredible talent who had been grinding for years. Is she taking a spot from a rising star? They asked. Is this just a part-time cash grab? The skepticism is a defense mechanism. Fans have been burned before by legends returning, only to deliver lackluster performances or disappear after a few months. They wanted to believe, but they were afraid to hope. Amidst this digital noise, the sheer weight of her legacy was being reconstructed in real time. Video packages fan-edited to sad music began circulating, showing her greatest triumphs and her heartbreaking exit years ago. These videos reminded the world of why she mattered. It wasn't just about moves or championships. It was about how she made people feel. She represented a specific era, a time in people's lives that they looked back on fondly. Her return was a time machine. For the WWE, this media chaos is exactly what they wanted. Engagement is the currency of the kingdom. But for her, the woman behind the character, it was an avalanche of expectation. Imagine opening your phone and seeing millions of people projecting their own desires, fears, and criticisms onto you. Some were calling her a queen, others were calling her a relic. The narrative quickly shifted to the dream match. Fantasy booking took over. Fans were creating graphics pitting her against the current champion, against the newcomer, against her old best friend. The possibilities were endless, and the hype was building a tower that would be incredibly difficult to climb. The danger of a return this massive is that the reality rarely lives up to the fantasy. By the time the sun came up the next morning, the world had already decided what her return meant. They had written the story for her. They had decided who she would fight, who she would beat, and when she would turn heel. But the internet, for all its collective intelligence, lacks the nuance of the human heart. They saw the pop, but they didn't see the person. They saw the trending topic, but they didn't see the woman sitting in a hotel room scrolling through the madness, wondering if she had just made the best decision of her life or the biggest mistake. The digital world is loud, but it is often wrong. And she knew that the only way to silence the noise was to do the one thing the internet couldn't do: step into the ring and fight. The lights, the noise, the tweets, those are the external layers of the story. Now we must go inward. We need to strip away the spectacle and look at the isolation of the athlete. Chapter 4 finds us in the days following the return, in a place that offers no applause, the empty gym. This is where the emotional weight of the story truly settles. The visual here is stark. Stickman figure alone in a vast warehouse gym. The sound design shifts from roaring crowds to the rhythmic thud of feet on a treadmill, the clanking of iron plates, and the heavy, ragged sound of breathing. This is the penance for the glory. She is finally back. Yes, but back means the return of the grind. Her body remembers the punishment, even if her mind had tried to forget it. As she wraps her hands in a meticulous, ritualistic process of taping knuckles and wrist, we see the scars. Not just physical scars, though. There are plenty of those, but the invisible wear and tear of a life spent hitting the mat. Why did she leave in the first place? You don't need a specific diagnosis to know the feeling. It was the burnout, the exhaustion, the feeling of being a hamster on a wheel that never stops spinning. She left to find herself, to heal, to be a person whose first name wasn't a trademark. She found peace in the quiet life. She woke up without pain. She drank coffee on her porch without wondering what city she was in. So, the conflict here is internal and profound. Why give that up? As she hits the ropes in the empty ring, running the drills, doubts creep in. She is older now. The new generation is faster, stronger, and more athletic. She feels the half-step of hesitation in her ankle. She feels the wind leave her lungs a little sooner than it used to. The fear isn't about losing a match. The fear is about embarrassing the memory of who she used to be. There is a moment where she stops, leaning against the turnbuckle, sweat dripping onto the canvas. She looks at her reflection in the gym mirror. She doesn't see a superstar. She sees a mother, or a daughter, or a wife, someone who has people depending on her to come home in one piece. Her family had been the sanctuary she ran to when she left. Now she is voluntarily walking back into the war zone. We see a brief glimpse of her phone screen. A text message from home. Maybe it's just a good luck or a miss you. It highlights the separation. The road is a lonely place. To be the queen, you have to rule alone. The emotional cost of this return is the distance it creates between her and the normality she fought so hard to build. But then, the switch flips. She wipes the sweat from her eyes. She looks at the ring, this 20-by-20 canvas that has been her canvas, her battlefield and her home. There is a love here that defies logic. It's an addiction to the art form. She realizes that the peace of the quiet life was beautiful, but it was boring. She missed the fire. She missed the pressure. She missed the feeling of being dangerous. She pushes off the turnbuckle and starts running the ropes again. It's faster this time, harder. The doubt is still there, but she uses it as fuel. This section reveals that her return isn't a victory lap. It's a fight for relevance. It's a battle against time itself. The fans think she is back to save the show, but the truth is more selfish and more human. She is back to prove to herself that she is still alive. The pain in her muscles is a reminder that she is real. And as she hits a perfect maneuver on a crash pad, a smile creeps across her face. The ghost in the gym is gone. The wrestler has returned. The weeks have passed. The initial shock has faded, the merchandise has been sold, and the novelty is worn off. Now, we arrive at the pivotal moment, the twist that gives this entire journey meaning. It's time for her to speak, not just with her presence, but with her intent. The scene is the center of the ring, a microphone in her hand, the crowd listening with bated breath. Everyone expects the standard promo. They expect her to say, "I'm back to win the championship." They expect her to call out the top heel. They expect the formula. But she stands there, looking at the belt resting on the shoulder of the current champion, who stands across from her. The tension is palpable. The crowd is chanting, waiting for the fight. But she lowers the microphone. She looks at the crowd, really looks at them, and then she looks at the young champion. "I didn't come back to take this from you," she says, her voice echoing through the arena. The crowd goes silent. The twist begins to unravel. "I didn't come back to relive my glory days," she continues. "I came back because I realized something while I was sitting on my couch watching you. I realized that the house I built is lonely without a family. This isn't a story about reclaiming the throne. It's a story about abdication." The twist is that her return wasn't an act of ego. It was an act of service. She reveals that she isn't here to be the forever champion. She is here to be the final boss. She is here to be the mountain that the new generation has to climb to prove they are ready. She realizes that her legacy isn't defined by how many more titles she can win, but by who she can elevate. If she defeats the new stars, she proves nothing. She's already a legend. But if she pushes them to their absolute limit, if she forces them to evolve, to become sharper, meaner, and better just to survive in the ring with her, then she has secured the future of the industry she loves. The conflict shifts. It's not about hate. It's about tough love. She looks the champion in the eye and says, "I'm going to beat you within an inch of your life. Not because I hate you, but because you need to know what it feels like to survive me. If you can't beat me, you don't deserve to lead them." It's a chilling moment. It transforms her from a nostalgic act into a gatekeeper of greatness. The crowd realizes they aren't watching a reunion tour. They are watching a trial by fire. The emotional weight lands heavy. The massive pop at the beginning was just the greeting. This moment, this realization of purpose is the true story. As the video concludes, we reflect on the nature of heroes. We want them to stay young forever. We want them to win forever. But the greatest thing a hero can do is prepare the world to survive without them. She drops the microphone. She doesn't offer a handshake. She offers a challenge. The screen fades to black with a final, lingering image. The legend walking up the ramp, back toward the exit, while the young champion stands in the ring, looking at the title belt, with a new understanding of how heavy it truly is. The pop is gone. The work has begun. The statement has been made. And the WWE has changed, not because she came back to rule it, but because she came back to ensure it survives long after she is gone.